So to take the results of your Clegg drops and put them into a spreadsheet and ultimately a map, where you want to start with is go to your Clegg control application. Once that interface pulls up, you're going to go ahead and click on the quick test. And in the quick test, it's going to store all of the locations and sites that you've dropped on. And this goes quite extensively. This doesn't take much information. You should be able to hold quite a lot in here. On this, what you're able to do is before you export any of this information out, you have to decide whether you want your export to look like one of two things. The first export is just the peak drops, or the other option is to take the export with all locations, all drops, and what it'll do is it'll give you the peak value in the drop that it achieved it in. Either way is fine. You can map either one of these. We find that really it's the peak drops that are of the most importance. So if you want to export a file that looks like this, how you accomplish that in your site or in your app is you come in here, open up the site that you want to export, click View, and there is an Export Data button. Now before you click this button, the three dots are going to be really helpful because here in the app settings, this allows you to determine all the different app settings, including the export capability. So by default, you can change the units. It's going to be the units in Civ or Clegg impact value. You can set your minimum threshold here as well, which means that it has to register at least this many in order for you to count that as a drop. What we can do here is in the display, you can either display the peak or the average, but the real key one that you're looking for here is what's called the export preference. And in this export preference, you can select only peak or all drops. And if you select only peak, it's going to weed out all the drops that obviously weren't peak at each location. So once you click only peak and hit OK, what you'll do is you have to save those settings and it'll take you back to your site that you want to export. Go ahead and click Export the Data. It'll produce a CSV file and it'll ask you how do you want to collect this data. Each tablet and device is set up according to your own preferences. So if you want to send this as an email to somebody or yourself, feel free to go ahead and do that. Once that CSV file is sent, CSV is just a simplified Excel file at the end of the day. What you're able to do is open that CSV file in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you want, and you'll get a file that looks like this. Now that file, you can go ahead and you can make different modifications. So for example, if you find a row is not to your liking, you can go ahead and you can delete the column, or you can delete whatever it is that you want in the columns, or keep whatever you want to keep in here. The key thing that you need to keep an eye on is the latitude and longitude. This is critical for mapping. And the other thing that's critical for mapping is you ahead of time have to think, what do you want to call each one of your locations? Simply put, location 1 through location 16, that's what we're going to call them. So that's what we're going to proceed forward with. I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to, after you make your edits and changes, what you'll need to do is you'll need to save this in its current state. So I'm just going to save this as a CSV file. You can see it down here. And this is where the tricky part comes in order to map this. And it's not really tricky, but what we recommend you do is use free tools. And the easiest one to use is Google. You can create a free Google email address at gmail.com. If you've already got a Google account or you've got a G Suite, or you basically have access to an ability to log into an account with the Google products, you're set. And what you want to do at this point is go to your Google Drive, and you have to go to Google Drive. Once you're on Google Drive, you can create a new file. Anything from a Google Word to a sheet to a slide or whatever you want, but there's also this more down here, and this is not negotiable. You have to click Google My Maps if you're going to be using Google. You just can't upload it to Google Maps. It has to be Google My Maps. Once it locates and opens up a new Google map, what you have the ability of doing here is going in and importing a CSV file or a spreadsheet or what's called a KML. Because we're working with CSV files, they're the easiest to work with. We're going to go ahead and we're going to import this file that we just downloaded. The file that I'm going to grab is the one that I just saved with the new information, and you're going to have to answer 2 pop-up windows. The first pop-up window is it's going to ask you, how do you want your place marks positioned? Latitude and longitude will be defaulted. Go ahead and use those. And the second one, it's going to ask you, how do you want to title each one of these pins on your map? Well, for our purposes here, we're just going to title it location. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that. Now Google will do the rest of the work, or the Google My Map will do the rest of the work. And depending on those latitude and longitudes, what it'll do is it'll map those within the Google My Map. And when you click on it, you'll see that the description will pop up as location 12 here. Oh, my fault. So here's location 12. Here's location 14, and so on. So you're able to click and get the location and then get the data along with the timestamp that this was taken, so you can't forge that. Now, one of the things that you can do in here is you can title this map differently. Obviously, you can go in and title this your sample 1 map as an example. Go ahead and hit save. If you have more roads or more sites that you want to add to this, the easiest thing to do is what's called add a layer. When you add a layer, it'll add an option underneath this or a new box, and you can import a new CSV file here. So you can map road 1, road 2, road 99, whatever you want to call it. And that's what it'll naturally take the name of the file that you're importing, but you can very easily come in here and rename that particular site. Now, the other thing that's really beneficial here is when it says uniform style, you can go ahead and you can uniform the style based on different values of your file. So if we want to base this on our peak value, I'm going to go ahead and choose peak. Then we can also select the ranges. And so what you can see is that the darker pins are the higher values. And if you want to use 4 colors, great. If you want to use more than 4 colors, it allows you up to 12, but you have to use at least 2. So if we go in here and we choose 6 colors, we can see that the darker marks are where the road is harder. The lighter marks are where the road is not quite as hard. Now, these, to give you an idea here, this one's going to equate out to over 300 CBR. The really dark ones are going to equate out to over 500 CBR. And what this allows you to do is to very quickly visually look at the soft spots or hard spots in your roads and get a mass sampling on that road. Once this has been applied and you've got your color schemes and what you want to do here, very easily what you need to do is go ahead and, if you want, you can share this with your client or with whoever you want. And what we can do here is we can let anybody with the link view this file. So all you have to do is copy this link, go to a new domain, go ahead and punch it in, and now anybody that you hand that domain to or that link to is going to be able to run your report, and they'll be able to go ahead and see what you've done here. Okay. Now, in the sharing, it's very critical that you go ahead and allow anyone with the link to view, because there's also an option in here for you to go ahead and embed this map to a website. So if you've got a website, what you're able to do is to go ahead and click on the embed to my website, go ahead and copy this code here, and that code you can put on any web page because it's HTML, and that will pull in this map on your website in a very succinct and easy to use manner.